You've felt it. The moment in a room where louder men fill the air and you remain quiet, yet something in you knows noise is not power. Discomfort rises, not because you lack worth, but because you sense a gap between impulse and control. That tension is not a flaw. It is a signal. Few learn to use it. Fewer still master it. This is where restraint becomes authority. Lesson 1, the first principle. How to command respect without saying much begins with understanding that silence is not the absence of presence. It is the concentration of it. Most men speak to prove they exist. They fill gaps in conversation the way insecure hands fill pockets. Words spill out before thought has settled. Noise becomes a shield against being overlooked. But the man who has learned restraint does not chase attention. He allows attention to arrive on its own, drawn by gravity rather than force. Silence is not emptiness. It is compression. Consider a room where opinions collide, voices overlap, explanations stretch long and thin, justifications pile on top of each other like unstable bricks. Then there is one man who does not compete. He listens without nodding too much. He speaks without rushing. He does not decorate his sentences. He does not add laughter to soften his statements. When he finally opens his mouth, the room adjusts. Not because he is louder, but because he has withheld sound long enough that each word now carries mass. Less words, more power. This is not a trick. It is a consequence. When you speak rarely, you signal that your words are not cheap. When you answer quickly, you show that your mind is reactive. When you answer slowly, you show that your mind is sovereign. Time has proven this pattern again and again. What is scarce is valued. What is abundant is ignored. Speech follows the same law. Picture a negotiation. One side speaks constantly, explaining, clarifying, filling every pause with reassurance. The other side asks a single question, then waits. The first side begins to talk again, volunteering more than was requested, revealing uncertainty, revealing need. Silence extracts truth. Words, when uncontrolled, leak position. The man who speaks little is not mysterious by design. He is protected by discipline. This applies to daily encounters. A colleague challenges you in front of others. The reflex is to defend yourself immediately, to prove, to justify, to counter. But a pause changes the hierarchy. A measured breath, a brief silence, eyes steady, posture unmoved. In that moment, you are no longer reacting. You are deciding. When you finally respond, fewer words, clear tone, no excess explanation. The challenge dissolves not through argument, but through composure. People mistake quietness for weakness only until they witness consistency. A quiet man who breaks under pressure is ignored. A quiet man who remains stable becomes unavoidable. Respect is not demanded, it is conceded. And it is conceded when others feel that you are not controlled by the environment. You do not chase the conversation. The conversation orbits you. There is discomfort in this practice. Silence feels risky. It exposes you. It forces you to confront the urge to perform. But that urge is the very chain that keeps most men ordinary. They speak to be liked. They speak to be safe. They speak to be seen. And in doing so, they reveal that they require permission to exist. The disciplined man does not request permission. He occupies space without apology. Words should feel like decisions, not impulses. When you answer fully. When you do not speak, you do not compensate with nervous gestures or forced smiles. Stillness completes the sentence that silence begins. The room reads you as stable, not passive, intentional, not absent. This is the foundation, not confidence as expression, but confidence as containment, the kind that does not announce itself, the kind that does not need agreement. the kind that stays seated while others reach for microphones that were never offered. Lesson 2, the second principle. How to command respect without saying much is not carried by the mouth alone. It is carried by the body that surrounds it. Words are only believed when the frame behind them is stable. A restless body weakens a controlled voice. A body that is still turns even a quiet presence into a structure others lean against without noticing. Most men betray themselves before they speak. Fingers tapping, foot shifting, jaw tightening, eyes darting, shoulders collapsing inward as if apologizing for existing. They say little, yet their body shouts uncertainty. Others sense it instantly. Respect does not land where the ground is moving. Physical stillness is not stiffness, it is command over impulse. It is the decision to occupy space without negotiation. When you stand fully. When you sit, you settle without fidgeting. When you look directly, without overcompensating. This is not intimidation, it is clarity. The world relaxes around a man who is not fighting himself. Think of two men in a meeting. One speaks often, leans forward, laughs quickly, nods excessively, eager to show engagement. The other leans back slightly, hands resting, shoulders open, eyes attentive but unhurried. Both may speak the same sentence. Only one will be remembered. The still man does not compete for space. He owns his. Your body is the first sentence you deliver. Before your voice arrives, your posture has already announced your rank. History has already tested this. Those who commanded armies, courts, or rooms did not rush their movements. They conserved them. Motion was chosen, not leaked. There is a reason predators move slowly before decisive action. There is a reason statues feel imposing. Stillness suggests reserve. Reserve suggests capacity. Capacity invites caution from others. They do not know what you might do, and so they measure themselves around you. This applies in ordinary situations, standing in line, sitting at dinner, entering an elevator. Most men shrink or overexpand, trying to find the correct performance. The disciplined man simply is. He does not rush to remove his jacket. He does not hurry to check his phone. He allows silence to sit on his shoulders without discomfort. People notice without understanding why. When you pair few words with physical steadiness, your presence becomes economical. Nothing is wasted. No excess motion, no excess speech. Each gesture carries intent. Each word carries decision. Controlled body, controlled voice, controlled outcome. Even confrontation changes shape. When someone raises their voice, steps closer, demands reaction, the instinct is to mirror energy. But stillness refuses escalation. A quiet posture, grounded stance, slow breath. You do not retreat, you do not attack, you remain. And the other man feels his own volatility reflected back at him, exposed. This is difficult at first. The body wants to release tension through movement. It wants to prove friendliness. It wants to dissolve discomfort. But the man who commands respect does not escape tension. He holds it. He lets others feel it too. That is how hierarchy is silently written. Silence without stillness is absence. Stillness without silence is intimidation. Together, they become authority that does not need announcement, sitting in the room long after the words have stopped. Lesson 3, the third principle. How to command respect without saying much is decided not only by silence, but by the moment you choose to break it. Most men speak when the urge arrives. They answer as soon as they are questioned. They respond the instant tension appears. Their timing is ruled by others, and so their words carry no weight. They are predictable, accessible, softened by availability. The disciplined man treats speech as a blade kept in its sheath. He does not draw it to feel powerful. He draws it when the moment demands consequence. Until then, he lets conversations move around him. He listens past the obvious. He watches where people rush, where they hesitate, where they over-explain. Timing is learned by observing impatience in others and resisting it in yourself. Imagine a group discussion where someone tells a story that drags on, searching for validation. Most interrupt, laugh, add commentary, try to appear engaged. The man who commands respect lets the story finish. He allows the silence after. That brief pause unsettles the teller. They feel exposed, then he speaks. One sentence, precise, no garnish, no apology. The room recalibrates around that sentence because it arrives when everyone else has spent their words too early. Words spoken too soon feel cheap. Words spoken too late feel irrelevant. But words spoken at the edge of discomfort land with force. This is why a pause before answering a question changes the balance. It signals that your response is considered, not harvested from habit. Others sense that you are not easy to extract from, and they adjust. A man who reacts immediately is easy to steer. Praise him and he smiles too fast. Provoke him and he defends too fast. Either way, he is governed. The man who delays response, even by a breath, steps out of the chain of stimulus and reaction. He becomes the one who chooses, not the one who is chosen. There is risk here. Silence after a question can feel like incompetence, but that fear belongs to those who live for approval. The disciplined man accepts the brief discomfort. He lets others wonder. Wonder creates gravity. Certainty creates boredom. In negotiation, the first to speak after an offer often loses ground. In arguments, the first to explode loses control. In leadership, the first to fill silence reveals insecurity. Timing is leverage, and leverage is invisible to those who speak to soothe themselves. This principle appears in daily life. A stranger challenges your opinion. You do not defend instantly. You let their words hang. You look once, calm, unmoved. Then you answer with fewer words than expected. Not cold, not warm, clear. The challenger now feels they must respond to you, not the other way around. Silence sets the stage. Stillness builds the frame. Timing delivers the strike. A man who knows when to speak does not need to speak often. Others begin to wait for his voice. They leave space for it without being asked. They sense that when he speaks, something shifts, not because he is loud, but because he is rare. Speech is not expression, it is intervention. And intervention is only effective when it arrives at the precise second the room forgets to breathe. Lesson 4, the fourth principle. How to command respect without saying much is completed by how you listen. Not passive listening, not polite listening, but strategic listening. Most men hear only to prepare their next sentence. Their attention is a waiting room for their own voice. They interrupt. They finish others' thoughts. They rush to demonstrate understanding. In doing so, they reveal impatience. And impatience is the signature of a man who needs to control the pace because he cannot control himself. The disciplined man listens as if time belongs to him. He does not steal turns. He does not rescue people from their pauses. He allows them to search for words. He allows them to repeat themselves. He allows them to expose their motives in layers, because every extra sentence someone speaks is another piece of information freely given. Listening is not courtesy, it is acquisition. A man who speaks little but listens fully becomes difficult to deceive. Others reveal their insecurities, their ambitions, their contradictions. They do this unknowingly because most people cannot tolerate silence. They fill it with confession. The quiet man simply holds the space. He does not nod excessively. He does not reassure. He does not offer verbal encouragement. He remains present without participation. And the other person continues, digging deeper than intended. Picture a workplace disagreement. One man speaks rapidly, stacking arguments, tone sharpening, seeking victory. The other lets him finish. No interruption, no defense. When the speaker finally stops, slightly breathless, the listener asks one short question. Not an aggressive question, a precise one. It lands cleanly because the room has emptied itself. The first man now realizes he has spoken too much. He has shown too much. The power has already shifted before any rebuttal appears. Less words, more power. Listening with discipline creates an imbalance. The speaker spends energy. The listener gathers it. Over time, people begin to feel that talking to you is consequential. They choose their words more carefully. They filter themselves because they sense that you are not just hearing them, you are reading them. This changes social dynamics quietly. In friendships, the man who always talks becomes entertainment. The man who listens becomes reference. In business, the man who explains becomes a resource. The man who listens becomes a decision point. In conflict, the man who shouts becomes noise. The man who listens becomes gravity. There is a temptation to show engagement with constant verbal feedback. I see. Exactly. Right. These small sounds feel harmless, but they cheapen your presence. They show eagerness to keep connection alive. The disciplined listener does not need to signal connection every second. He trusts that his attention is already felt. He is not afraid of being misunderstood in the moment. He allows silence to do the bonding. People test this. They pause mid-sentence to see if you will rush to fill the gap. They trail off to see if you will rescue them. When you do not, they feel a subtle pressure. Not cruelty, not manipulation, just the weight of their own unfinished thought. And they complete it themselves. This trains others to carry their own conversations in your presence. You become the anchor, not the entertainer. Listening also reveals hierarchy. The man who listens more than he speaks is rarely seen as subordinate. He is seen as evaluating, observing, deciding whether something deserves response. Others unconsciously seek his reaction. A glance, a nod, a single word. He does not chase attention. Attention waits for him. It takes restraint to listen without collecting emotional debt, to hear complaints without consoling, to hear praise without softening, to hear provocation without reacting. This is where most fail. They get pulled into the emotional rhythm of others. The disciplined man remains in his own rhythm, slow, deliberate, unmoved. Over time, people sense that speaking in front of you is like stepping onto a clean floor. Every footprint shows. Every misstep is visible. They grow careful. And careful behavior is respect emerging without demand. You do not need to speak much when others are already choosing their words around you. Lesson 5, the fifth principle. How to command respect without saying much reaches its sharpest edge when you refuse to explain yourself. Most men bleed power through justification. They over-clarify, over-defend, over-contextualize. They build paragraphs around simple decisions because they fear being misunderstood. But the need to be understood is the twin of the need to be accepted. And acceptance is a currency that costs authority. A man who explains himself too quickly shows that he is negotiable, that his position can be softened, that his decisions are open for revision if enough pressure is applied. Words meant to clarify become openings for intrusion. Each extra sentence is a handle others can pull. Consider a simple boundary. You decline an invitation. The ordinary man adds reasons. He talks about schedule, energy, obligations, weather, mood. He hopes the explanation will prevent disappointment. But what it really does is teach others how to override him next time. Remove the obstacle and he will comply. His refusal was not firm. It was conditional. The disciplined man declines with minimal words. Not rude, not cold, final, no ornament, no justification. The listener may feel brief confusion, but confusion is not disrespect. It is recalibration. They learn that this man's decisions are not built from convenience. They stand on something deeper that is not open for inspection. People will test this. They will ask, why? Not from curiosity, but from instinct to probe for weakness. The reflex is to answer, but the disciplined man understands that not every question deserves access. Silence in response to probing is not evasion. It is selection. One sentence is enough, sometimes none. Anchor sentence. A man who owes no explanation owes no permission. This does not mean secrecy. It means self-containment. Your inner reasoning is not a public resource. When you reveal every motive, you invite judgment on every motive. When you guard your motives, only your outcomes are judged, and outcomes carry more respect than intentions. In leadership, this principle is decisive. A leader who explains every choice teaches his group to negotiate every choice. A leader who speaks decisions simply, with few words and steady tone, teaches the group to adapt. The room stops leaning forward to debate and starts leaning back to observe. Hierarchy is not declared, it is accepted. In conflict, refusing to over-explain is equally potent. An accusation arrives. Most men rush to defend. They pour out reasons, history, emotion. But defense places you in the lower position, arguing for your right to stand where you already are. The disciplined man answers only what is necessary. No emotional scaffolding, no narrative, just the essential. The accuser either accepts or reveals their intent to escalate. In both cases, the man who remained concise keeps the advantage. Even in affection, this applies. Constant reassurance signals fear of loss. Constant explanation signals fear of misinterpretation. The man who is clear in action does not need to explain his character. He lets consistency speak across time. Time has already tested this pattern. There is discomfort in this refusal. You will feel the urge to soften the silence, to offer comfort through clarification. Resist, not to be cruel, but to remain sovereign. People respect what they cannot push through. They trust what does not wobble under pressure. Less words, more power. When you stop explaining yourself, you begin revealing something stronger than information. You reveal that your center is not located in the reactions of others, and the room quietly adjusts to the weight of that realization. Lesson 6, the sixth principle. How to command respect without saying much is proven in one of the hardest disciplines, non-reaction. Most men believe strength is shown by answering force with force, volume with volume, emotion with emotion. They mirror the energy in front of them because they feel compelled to show they are not weak. But reaction is not strength. Reaction is obedience to external stimulus, and obedience is never respected, only exploited. A raised voice arrives, a sharp remark, a challenge wrapped in sarcasm. The ordinary man's body tightens. His words load themselves before thought. He answers quickly, louder, sharper, more forceful. He believes he has defended himself, but everyone in the room has seen the truth. He was pulled. His state is controlled by another. He has surrendered command. The disciplined man does something different. He hears the provocation. He feels the impulse to respond, and he does nothing. Not retreat, not submission, stillness, a breath, a steady gaze, a neutral face, no tightening of shoulders, no verbal counterstrike. The other person is left holding their own intensity alone. It looks suddenly oversized, embarrassing, exposed. Non-reaction is not passivity. It is mastery over impulse. It tells the world, I choose when energy moves through me. I am not an echo. Anchor sentence. The man who cannot be provoked cannot be positioned. In daily life, this is rare, which is why it is respected. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Most respond with gestures, muttering, tension carried for hours. The disciplined man corrects the car's position and releases the event. No story, no lingering, no performance of outrage. He arrives where he was going, unchanged. In conversation, someone attempts to bait you. A comment designed to trigger pride, insecurity, or anger. If you bite, you are now dancing to their rhythm. If you stay still, they lose footing. They may escalate, joke, or retreat. In every outcome, you have stayed in your own frame, and frame is everything. Non-reaction also protects authority. A leader who reacts emotionally to every problem becomes unstable in the eyes of his group. They begin to manage him instead of following him. But a leader who receives chaos without absorbing it becomes a stabilizing force. People start bringing him truth, not just comfort, because they know he will not collapse under it. This principle is brutal to learn because it demands swallowing the desire to prove yourself, the urge to correct, the urge to defend, the urge to strike back. These urges feel righteous, but righteousness is cheap. Discipline is costly. Silence in the face of provocation is not weakness when it is chosen. It is a mirror held up to the aggressor. They see themselves more clearly than you ever could explain to them. And that self-vision is what alters behavior, not your counterattack. There will be times to respond. Non-reaction is not permanent muteness. It is delayed response. Response chosen, not forced. The difference is everything. One is a reflex, the other is a verdict. Over time, people learn not to test what does not react. They redirect their provocations towards softer targets. They speak more carefully around you. They sense that stirring your waters will not produce the drama they seek. Respect is born quietly in that avoidance. Less words, more power. A man who owns his reactions owns every room he enters, even when he says nothing at all. Lesson 7, the seventh principle. How to command respect without saying much is strengthened when you let others reveal themselves first. Most men rush to declare who they are. They introduce their opinions, their preferences, their boundaries, their history, as if identity must be announced to be real. In doing so, they give away their shape too early, and once shape is known, it can be pushed against. The disciplined man does not hurry to display himself. He enters conversations lightly. He allows others to speak, to present, to assert. He watches how they frame themselves, how they sell themselves, how they defend themselves. He gathers their patterns before showing his own. By the time he speaks, he already knows where he stands. Others are still guessing. In a new group, most men feel pressure to perform. They talk about achievements. They tell stories. They laugh loudly. They express opinions strongly to carve territory. The quiet man simply listens, not shy, not withdrawn, present, calm, observant. The group fills the silence with their identities. They place their cards face up. The quiet man has not yet placed his. Instantly, he holds advantage. People trust what they think they discovered themselves. When you reveal little, others fill the blanks with assumption. Often, they assume depth. They assume control. They assume seriousness. Because there is no evidence to the contrary. Mystery is not created by acting mysterious. It is created by not oversharing. Anchor sentence. What you reveal too early can be used too easily. In business, a man who discloses his full plan invites others to edit it. A man who discloses only what is necessary invites others to follow. In friendship, a man who shares every insecurity invites caretaking or exploitation. A man who shares selectively invites respect. In conflict, a man who states his limits too early invites testing. A man who lets others step forward first reveals who is reckless and who is measured. This principle does not mean deception. It means pacing. The world does not need immediate access to your interior. A house without doors is not welcoming. It is unprotected. When others speak first, they show their fears. They show their ambitions. They show their temperament. They tell you how they handle disagreement. They show whether they seek dominance, approval, or peace. All of this is intelligence freely offered, and you did not need to speak a word to obtain it. Then, when you finally speak, you speak into knowledge, not guesswork. Your few words land accurately because you understand the terrain. Others feel this. They feel seen without knowing how. They feel assessed without being attacked. This quiet accuracy becomes authority. There is another layer. When you do not reveal yourself quickly, people lean in. They ask questions. They seek your view. Now, your words are requested, not volunteered. Requested words carry weight. Volunteered words carry need. The temptation is strong to prove you belong, to prove you are interesting, to prove you are safe. But the disciplined man does not chase belonging. He lets belonging approach him, and when it does, it approaches on his terms. Over time, people learn that your words arrive after observation, not impulse. They begin to wait for your assessment in situations. They ask for your judgment. They give you the conversational floor without you asking for it. This is how quiet men become reference points in groups that once ignored them. Less words, more power. When you let others reveal themselves first, you step out of the scramble for position and into the role of silent evaluator, and the room unconsciously shifts to accommodate the one who is hardest to read. Lesson 8. The eighth principle. How to command respect without saying much is anchored in how you create boundaries without verbal enforcement. Most men announce their limits loudly. They declare what they will not tolerate. They repeat warnings. They explain their standards. But a boundary spoken too often becomes a request. A boundary explained becomes negotiable. A boundary defended becomes fragile. The disciplined man sets boundaries through behavior. He does not need to proclaim them. When something crosses his line, he does not argue. He adjusts his presence. He withdraws attention. He changes position. He ends the interaction. No lecture, no threat, no justification. The message is delivered through consequence, not conversation. People learn quickly from consequence. Words can be debated. Consequence cannot. Anchor sentence. A boundary enforced in silence is a boundary remembered. Consider someone who disrespects you in a group. Most men respond by calling it out, explaining why it is unacceptable, demanding correction. The result is usually escalation or awkward compliance. Either way, the boundary now depends on your continued verbal defense. The disciplined man handles it differently. The disrespect occurs. He pauses. He looks once. Then he disengages. He turns away. He redirects his attention. He leaves the conversation. He does not slam doors. He does not announce departure. He simply removes access. The disrespectful person is left facing a social void they did not anticipate. They feel the cost immediately. No words were needed. In relationships, boundaries often dissolve through over-discussion. "I need you to respect my time," repeated many times, becomes background noise. But the man who values his time simply becomes unavailable when it is misused. He does not explain. He does not apologize. He returns when interaction is aligned. Others adapt or lose access. Either outcome reinforces his frame. In professional settings, a man who tolerates interruptions, last-minute demands, or casual disrespect trains others to continue. A man who quietly refuses, by not answering immediately, by rescheduling, by declining without explanation, teaches others how to treat him. No confrontation, no drama, just structure. This principle requires emotional endurance. There is discomfort in not explaining yourself. There is guilt in not softening the consequence. There is fear of being misinterpreted. But respect does not grow from being perfectly understood. It grows from being consistent. Silence here is not avoidance. It is economy. Why spend words where action is clearer? When you speak boundaries, people hear opinion. When you enact boundaries, people experience reality. Over time, your presence acquires a shape. People know where you stand without being told. They approach with more care. They speak with more precision. They plan with more respect for your time. Not because you demanded it, but because you demonstrated it. This also filters those who remain in your circle. Those who require constant explanation drift away. Those who respect structure stay. Your environment becomes quieter, more deliberate, less chaotic. Not by force, by selection. Less words, more power. A man who does not need to announce his limits lives in a world where limits are already felt, and that silent architecture becomes the foundation of his authority. Lesson 9, the 9th principle. How to command respect without saying much is revealed in how you leave conversations before power dissipates. Most men stay too long. They linger after their point is made. They add extra sentences. They soften their exit with humor. They search for the perfect closing. In doing so, they drain the weight they had built. They turn presence into background noise. The disciplined man understands that presence is a resource. When he enters a conversation, the energy shifts. When he speaks, attention gathers. When he leaves, the space he occupied becomes noticeable. If he stays until he becomes ordinary, his presence loses its effect. If he exits while gravity is still intact, the room remembers him. Anchor sentence: leave while the room is still leaning toward you. This principle appears in simple moments. You share an opinion in a group. The room quiets. People consider it. The ordinary man now feels pressure to explain further, to defend, to elaborate, to joke. He tries to ride the moment. The disciplined man says what is needed and stops. He lets silence settle. Then, when the exchange is complete, he nods once, shifts his posture, and disengages. The conversation continues without him, but his words remain inside it. In social settings, many men fear abrupt endings. They stay in small talk long after it has lost meaning. They speak out of politeness, not intention. The disciplined man does not fear appearing reserved. He greets, exchanges what is necessary, then leaves. Not hurried, not awkward, simply complete. People sense that his time is not scattered. They adjust the value of his attention accordingly. In work environments, meetings often drift into repetition. Most remain, adding occasional remarks to justify their presence. The disciplined man contributes when contribution matters. Then he signals departure with few words. No apology, no excessive courtesy, just departure. Others notice. Some will feel discomfort. Some will feel admiration. But all will remember that he does not stay where his presence is no longer required. This principle protects your energy. A man who stays everywhere becomes diluted everywhere. A man who appears selectively becomes significant where he appears. Respect is built through scarcity. There is a subtle fear that arises when practicing this. Fear of missing something, fear of being excluded, fear of being judged as aloof. These fears belong to a mind that seeks inclusion as survival. The disciplined man understands that inclusion purchased through overexposure is not inclusion. It is consumption. When you leave at the right moment, people continue thinking about what you said. They replay your words. They wonder what you might say next time. They project depth into your silence. You have given them space to engage with your absence. This is far more powerful than flooding them with your presence. Timing your exit is an art. Too early and you appear evasive. Too late, and you become furniture. The disciplined man watches the moment when his contribution has landed and no longer needs reinforcement. He departs there, cleanly. This also trains others to value your presence. They know you will not stay endlessly. They listen more carefully when you speak. They prepare more thoughtfully when approaching you. They do not waste your time because they know you will not offer it freely. Less words, more power. A man who knows when to leave teaches the world that his presence is intentional, and intentional presence commands respect without a single announcement. Lesson 10, the 10th principle. How to command respect without saying much is sealed by the final discipline, letting silence remain after you speak. Most men fear the void that follows their words. They rush to fill it. They add, "you know," or laughter, or clarification, or another point. They patch the quiet because they fear being misinterpreted, ignored, or judged. But silence after speech is not emptiness. It is absorption. And absorption is where authority takes root. When you speak and then stop, you give your words room to settle. When you speak and continue speaking, you crush your own message under excess. The disciplined man delivers his sentence and allows the air to hold it. He does not rescue others from thinking. He does not soften the impact. He does not chase agreement. Anchor sentence. A word that is not followed by noise becomes weight. Imagine a difficult conversation. You state a boundary, a decision, a refusal. The ordinary man then explains, apologizes, reassures, negotiates. By the end, no one remembers the original statement, only the emotional debris around it. The disciplined man states his position and stops. Silence follows. The other person now must deal with the statement itself, not the performance around it. This forces maturity in the exchange. In leadership, this principle separates presence from performance. A leader speaks direction, then allows quiet. People process. They adjust. They move. A leader who keeps talking creates dependency. A leader who stops talking creates agency. Both produce action. Only one produces respect. In argument, silence after a statement invites reflection, or it invites escalation. Either outcome serves clarity. If the other person reflects, the exchange deepens. If they escalate, their instability is revealed. The disciplined man does not need to expose others. He allows them to expose themselves. This is uncomfortable. You will feel the impulse to fill the gap, to check if you are heard, to ask if they understand, to seek confirmation, but confirmation is often just disguised insecurity. The disciplined man trusts that what needed to be said has been said. He does not chase its reception. Silence after speech also protects you from overcommitting. Many men talk themselves into positions they never intended to take. They agree to things they do not want. They reveal opinions that should have remained private. They do this because they fear stopping. The disciplined man stops when truth is delivered. No further excavation. In social environments, this creates magnetism without performance. You contribute. Then you rest in quiet. Others speak. Others react. Others seek to fill space. You observe. You decide if another word is necessary. Often it is not, and that restraint is felt. Over time, people grow accustomed to your pattern. When you speak, they listen fully because they know you will not repeat yourself. They know you will not repackage. They know you will not chase their agreement. Your words become singular events, not ongoing noise. This principle also teaches self-respect. When you allow your words to stand alone, you treat them as complete. When you feel compelled to add more, you reveal doubt in your own message. The disciplined man trusts his delivery. He lets silence finish his sentence. There is no need to intimidate, no need to perform depth, no need to act mysterious. Just clarity followed by stillness. That is enough. Less words, more power. A man who lets silence remain after he speaks leaves others alone with his message. And in that quiet space, respect quietly takes form. If these words sharpen something in you, don't let it fade back into noise. Subscribe to Austere Mind, stay where discipline is built, not advertised, and leave a comment, not to agree, not to praise, simply to mark that you were here and that you are paying attention.